Find the equation of the linear function represented by the table below in slope-intercept form. So we did do this last fall. This is just kind of a refresher as we get toward the end of the year. And it's the equation for slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where the letter m is our slope and our b is our y-intercept. So when you go to Google Classroom, it's going to give you the following suggestions. Our first bullet says use slope formula to solve for slope, which is our m. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use, let's see, red for the first part. So I'm going to start by writing the formula for slope. So m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And by sub we mean it's kind of slightly below the line. The number 2 and the number 1 simply mean this is your second point and this is your first point. So the first thing we're going to have to remind ourselves is that to find slope we need 2 points. Over here we actually have an abundance. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 points. So all you have to decide is which values do you want to substitute over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and call this one right here. I'm going to call this point number 1. And then I'm going to call this point number 2. You can choose any 2 you want. So switching over to red, my y value is 5. So I'm going to put, actually that's y sub 1. So I'm going to put 5 in for y sub 1 because I said that's 0.1. And then the x value that goes with that y is 1. So it's going to be 5 over 1. And notice that those positive numbers became a negative because there was a negative in the formula. All right, point number 2, my y value here is 8. And so for y sub 2, I'm going to put in 8. And then the x value that goes with that y is 2. So it's really 8 minus 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. And then 2 subtract 1 is 1. So we have 3 over 1, which then simplifies to just 3. So my m that I found out for the first bullet is 3. Now I'm going to switch over to green, and the second bullet says use slope-intercept form to solve for the y-intercept. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And we know our m is 3. So where the m is, I'm going to put parentheses and I'm going to substitute 3 in there. And now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to substitute something for y and for x. So I'm just going to give myself parentheses here and here. And when we're done, we should be able to find out what our b value is. Now you can choose point 1, 2, 3, or 4. I think that point 1 is going to be the easiest, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use this point again. But the point you choose is up to you. I'm choosing 1 and 5 because they just look easier compared to the other one. So my y value, 5 goes in for y, and 1 goes in for x. So it's 5 equals 3 times 1 plus b. So that's just going to simplify to 5. 3 times 1 is 3. So I've got 5 equals 3 plus b. Then I'll solve for b by subtracting 3 on each side. And 5 minus 3 is 2. Simplifies to b. And so right here, my b value is 2. Now that I have my m and my b, we're going to write the final equation in slope-intercept form. So let's switch over to blue for this. So just to remind you, y equals mx plus b. That's our format. Remember down here we put y equals mx plus b. Now all we have to do is we're going to plug in our m value. So I have y equals, in goes 3 for m. Don't forget your x there. And our b value is 2. So I'm going to put plus 2. I'm going to go ahead and box my final answer. It's a good habit to get into. And what we're going to do is back in Delta Math, we're going to go ahead and put a plus 2 there. And then I'm going to get rid of m and I'm going to put a 3. And if we get a check mark, we're good. And if not, we'll go ahead and just reevaluate and find out where we made a mistake if it's red X. Again, making mistakes is part of the learning process, so don't be fearful of that. There, we got it. Let's see if we can find one that's like a little bit harder. There, let's go ahead and try this one because it has negative values. All right, took a moment to go ahead and copy and paste the instructions from Google Classroom and steal the table of values. So red for our first one, use the slope formula to find the slope. So I'm going to write m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Alternatively, you could go ahead and pause the video and try and work it out on your own and see if you'll get the same thing that I got now that you kind of have a refresher. Don't forget your subtract signs. And then now we've got a total of 4 points. I'm going to go ahead and say, I think these two numbers will be easiest. So I'm going to call this point number 1, and I'm going to call this point number 2. So let's see, negative 3 goes in here, and then the x value is going to be 2. In for my y sub 1 is negative 2, which that's going to switch to a positive now. And then in goes the 1 with that negative 2. And that's going to stay negative. So I really have negative 3 plus 2, which is negative 1. And 2 minus 1 is 1. Negative 1 over 1 simplifies to negative 1. So our m value is negative 1. Now let's switch over to green, and we want to go ahead and solve for b. So I'm going to put slope-intercept form. Just like the instruction said, use slope-intercept form to solve for the y-intercept. I think this is the easiest point, so I'm going to use green for that one. So my y value right there is negative 2 is equal to, our m we said is negative 1. And then the x value that goes with that y is positive 1. So I have negative 2 is equal to negative 1 times 1, which is negative 1 plus b. We'll add 1 on each side. And negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. So we find out our b value is negative 1. We have our m and our b. Let's cross that off, and let's go now to blue. We want to write the final equation in slope-intercept form. So we have y equals mx plus b. We're going to go ahead and plug in, let's see, I've got y equals negative 1. You could just write negative 1x. And my b value is negative 1. Although, I'll be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with putting negative 1x. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we could put negative 1 over 1x, but really we don't need to. So as you transition from 8th grade to high school, you should get into the habit that whatever's not necessary, don't put it. So I'm going to put y is equal to, and I'm going to simplify negative 1x as just negative x minus 1. And that's what I'm going to input for my final answer. But I'm pretty sure Delta Math is forgiving. So if you put negative 1x minus 1 or negative 1 over 1x, it's probably still going to give that to you as right. All right, let's get some feedback. Y equals negative x minus 1. Green check marks, good. Go on to the next question. Red X, stop. Please find your mistake. Remember, mistakes are okay. It's part of the learning process. And that's it. So hopefully you found this helpful and a good review. But I guarantee you're going to use this the rest of the time in high school. So please take the time to learn it. Or review it and learn it now.